Okay, so the purpose of the activity we're going to be working on today and probably tomorrow as well is to just do some vector stuff, like, you know, do the tail to head, finding the components, things like that, without it having to be sitting on working on Coderre's boring worksheet. Okay, this way you get to kind of work with some other people, do this in a group, okay, stuff like that, so it's a little less boring, hopefully. Okay, now, how many people in here have ever used a topographical map? Such a generation gap. You guys have Google Maps on your phone now, and nobody knows how to use. Okay, so a topographical map looks like this. Okay, so it's got little like squiggly lines all over it. Okay, and the squiggly lines are there to give you a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional space. Okay, so these contour lines, that's what all the squiggly lines are, give you an idea of elevation. The closer together they are, the faster the elevation changes. In other words, the steeper that area is. Okay? So if they're all like right on top of each other, it's a what?
Really steep.
Or a cliff, yeah. Yeah. So if we're looking at like this area here, okay, or here, these lines here are, you know, fairly far apart. So it's, you know, uphill, but it's not, you know, it's walkable. Whereas if I'm looking at like a section like maybe right here where they're really close together, this is probably a waterfall because that little blue line would be a creek, okay? And these lines are basically right on top of each other. Same with like right here. That's probably a cliff compared to here where the lines are further apart. So it helps you to kind of plan where you might be able to walk. Okay, everyone kind of follow me on that? The other thing you get from this topographical map, because it's in color, is the green areas are below the tree line. Okay, if you've ever been in the mountains, well, we can't see them today because it's too smoky, but normally when you see the mountains, you can see like there's the green part and then there's a gray part. Okay, well the gray part is above the tree line where the trees stop growing, okay, and then the green part is below the tree line. Okay, so you're in the trees. That affects, of course, how fast and where you can walk. Okay, so that tells you that as well. Everyone with me so far? Okay, that's really all you're going to need to know about a topographical map in order to do this activity. There's a lot more stuff to it if you want to use one effectively. Okay, so your group is going to get a topographical map. It's actually going to be 3 pages. You're going to have to tape them together. Okay, that'll look like this. Okay, it's an area of Jasper National Park around Moline Lake. And what we're going to do is we're going to have you in this assignment plan your route from the start to day 1, or cabin 1, from cabin 1 to cabin 2, from cabin 2 to cabin 3, 3 to 4, and 4 to 5, and you'll end at 5. Okay, so you're going to have to plan your route, okay, kind of draw it out, and then I'm going to ask you to do some measuring. Okay, some scalar measuring, that would be how far you actually have to walk to get from 1 to or from start to 1 or from 1 to 2, okay, and also some vector stuff, like, all right, well, what's the displacement from start to 1? That's straight line from there to there, and get the angle and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, everyone kind of following what I'm looking for here? Yep. Okay. Now, there's some rules to follow and things like that. Okay, so your assignment, like we said, is to plan your routes to each of the destinations. Okay, when doing this, there's several things to consider and rules to obey. Some things to consider are that conditions in the mountains can influence the speed at which you travel, especially if you're adventurous and you're going to go off trail. Okay, which I'm going to force you to do on several of the days. No. Yes, trees, snow, glaciers, rivers, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you need to look at how steep is an area. Like, can I actually walk there, or is that one small step for me and one big step for whoever has to clean up the mess at the bottom? Okay, so yeah, you got to think about that kind of stuff. Okay, areas you wish to traverse, how high you are in terms of altitude. Okay, how many times do you have to cross streams, as this is often a slow and treacherous process. So the rules are: rule number 1. On trail speed. So if you choose to stay on a trail, which are dotted lines on the map, okay, if you are on trail below the tree line, okay, you can make 1.5 meters per second for your speed. Okay, if you are above the tree line, you can only walk at 1.2 meters per second on a trail. Why the difference? Yeah, you're going to get tired faster. Okay, you're above the tree line. Okay, air is thinner, you can't walk as fast. Okay, so above the tree line on the trail, 1.2 meters per second. Below the tree line on the trail, 1.5 meters per second. Benefit of being on the trail, stream crossings are not a factor because if you're on a trail, there will be a bridge. Okay. Number 2, the bushwhacker rule. If you go off trail, okay, below the tree line, you can move at 0.75 meters per second. Above the tree line, 1.0 meters per second. Why did it flip?
Because you're not having like bushwhack away through a bunch of trees where like there's no trees.
Right. If you're above the tree line, it's just like unstable rocks that you have to deal with. If you're below the tree line, well, it's everything. Trees, bushes, okay, all that kind of stuff. So if you're below the tree line, off a trail, that's your speed. Okay. If you're above the tree line, off the trail, it's 1.0. And the third rule is the silly salmon rule. Okay? You are not a fish, therefore any stream crossing, not on a trail, adds 15 minutes to your total time. Okay? Because you don't just walk through a river. Okay? You don't just, oh, well, here I am, and walk through it. Okay? Like you don't want to have wet socks for the day. You don't want to get washed away. So you have to find a good spot to cross. You have to pick your way across carefully. Maybe you have to seal up your pack so your gear doesn't get wet. All that stuff takes time. It's 15 minutes. It's your total time for the day to cross a stream. So you don't want to just be going crossing streams willy-nilly all the time. Okay? Everyone with me on that? Yeah. Okay. So, second part of this activity is to practice your kinematic skills and formulae. So for each day, you're going to need to measure the total distance traveled using a string or a headphone or a power cable or anything else that you might be able to take the shape of your route. Okay, so if we're demonstrating this, so day 1, from start to 1, there's actually a trail that runs beside the creek here. Okay, and you'd just be able to follow the trail like this. Okay, like everybody's going to do that on day 1. You'd be crazy to do anything else. Okay, so I'm going to follow the trail. Now, how do I measure that? It's not straight.
With a string.
A string. Okay, so I put like a headphone cable, a power cable, a shoelace, okay, anything that you got, and I just lay it out on the paper so it takes that shape, and then I pinch each end, straighten it, and set it on the ruler. Okay, now I've measured that. Now, here's where scale is important. The scale on this map, okay, is 1 to 50,000. So that means 1 centimeter on the map is 500 meters in reality. Okay, so you got to do your measurement. How many centimeters? Multiply that by 500, and that'll get you your meters. Okay? You want to follow it so far? All right. So that'll be your distance for the day. Now, if I'm on the trail the whole way, I know that that's going to be at 1.5 meters per second. Can I figure out how long that will take? Okay, so I'll do that calculation. Right? Then I've got to do my vector stuff. Okay, well, my vector stuff will look like this. Okay, there's my displacement for day 1. And I just directly measure that with a ruler. Yeah, because it's a straight line. Okay, so now I'll know my displacement, but displacement's a vector quantity. What else do I need? I need the angle. So I'll have to draw a triangle for each day with a north component and, for this day, a west component. How do I make sure my lines are perfectly north and south and east and west? A ruler, and on the map, you see all these grid lines? They run north and south and east and west. Just make sure your lines are parallel to them when you draw them. Okay? Everyone with me there? All right, so now, if I measure the sides of this triangle, will that give me the ability to get that angle? Right? And this one would be which way? West of north. Okay? So, I'll have my displacement, my distance, my average speed will be 1.5 meters per second because I stayed on the trail the whole time. I can calculate my average velocity because I'll know my displacement and my time. Okay? And that's what I'm going to need. For each day, I'm going to need the distance, the time, the displacement, the velocity, and the speed. Okay? For the day. Everybody follow so far? All right. So that day 1, it's pretty easy because it's all one trail. I make it get crazier from there. Right? So let's say that on another day, and this is not a day that you would do, but let's just say that on this particular day, I follow a trail and then I decide, oh, I don't want to go on the trail anymore. Now I'm going to go off the trail. And then I'm going to get back on the trail the rest of the way. Okay, can I still measure the distance with a string? I can, but here's what I have to keep in mind. I can walk at 1.5 meters per second here and here, but here I can only walk at 0.75. So I've got to calculate the time for this section with 1.5, the time for this section with 0.75, and the time for this section with 1.5. Okay, as my speeds. All right, so I've got to keep that in mind. The vector stuff is still the same. I would draw a straight line from there to there, draw my triangle, and do my vector stuff. But to get my time for the day means using different speeds. Okay, so spoiler alert. From 1 to 2, there's a trail, but I intentionally cut it off at the top of the map so you couldn't follow it all day. Okay, so you will be off trail for part of the day. All right, and then when you're going from 2 to 3, there's no trail. Well, there may be a trail for part of it, but like what I don't want you to do is go, well, I'll just go over all the stuff I went before, because that's not the fastest way. Okay, maybe you want to go a different way, like through this pass or something. Okay, you got to pick kind of logical routes. Okay, and then figure out your distances, your time, etc. Okay. So my suggestion would be that you probably want to color code it like this, because what I'm going to want to see when you hand in your map is something like this. Okay, here's the routes we followed, and this one we walked at this speed, this one we walked at this speed, and so on. Okay, I'm going to want to see all of those and the triangles on the map. Okay, so you're handing in the map with this on it, and then you're going to hand in another sheet that's got the calculations on it. Okay, because we said that for each day, distance, speed, displacement, velocity, and time, and at the end of it, the same thing for the total trip. Okay, so for the whole trip, what do you do with your distances? Add them all together. Okay, your displacement's just from start to 5. Okay, and do your calculations, add up your times, all of that. So the calculations for those things for each day and for the whole trip at the end. Okay, so we're going to want to see a sheet with that. Now, you're doing this with a group, so find a way to break up the work. Okay, maybe get one person this day, one person that day, or maybe one person does all the triangles. You decide what works for you. Okay, just make sure everybody's got a job. Don't let anybody freeload. Okay. My other suggestion is, because you're handing this in as a group, somebody's got to keep your map somewhere. And maybe that somebody gets sick and they're not here tomorrow, and you need the map. Everybody take a picture of the map. Okay, I'll have lots of extra copies of the map so that if that person doesn't show up, you can just take your picture and quickly draw it out again on another map, and it's not lost. Or worst case scenario, the day it's due, the person who has the map and all the calculations isn't here, but you took a picture of it, so you're okay because you could just send me the picture and the map and all of that. Okay, that eliminates that whole, oh, I hate this person for the rest of my life because they screwed me over on late marks because they weren't here that day. Obviously that wouldn't happen, but okay, just in case someone's not here, then everybody always has the latest updated picture of the map. Okay, so let's say groups of like 3, 4 tops. More than 4, nobody has enough work. Less than 3, there's too much work for everybody. Okay, so what you're going to do, guys, is take 3 pieces of paper. So take the first 3, and that'll be the 3 sections of the map. It's pretty obvious, just make the words fit. You might need to trim the edges, because it never lets me go right to the edge. So if you trim the edges and then tape them together, okay, there's tape up here, just take some tape with you, right? And then we should be able to get going on that. I'll put the map back up here. The reason I'm putting the map back up here is so that you can find these spots quickly. Listening, please. Because over down here, okay, in this section of the map, there's other like 4s and 3s, and I don't want you to get confused. That's actually because I used this map for a backpacking trip before you were born. But yeah, so a long time ago. Map's still valid though, the mountains haven't changed.
Now we're talking grade 11s or grade 12s?
Both. Yeah, okay. So yeah, don't worry about anything down in here, okay? These are the places I want you to go. You'll be able to find them on the map pretty easily, okay? All right, questions from you guys? Oh, wait, you know what? 4 got cut off right in between the maps. And so did 3. Okay, so you're gonna have to place 4 and 3 on your map because they got cut off right in between the maps. Oh no, 4 is right here. 3 is right here, so it's just on the seam, but 4 I can't find, so it must have got cut off. Okay, so every group come up and maybe get like 2 copies of the sheets.
Do you have a group? Okay, would you like to read your group? All right.
Okay, if someone ends up without a group, just let me know and I'll have to make some new friends.
Can we move this?
Yeah.